What's wrong with the court system that we already have? Nothing, actually, if you consider the fact that there have been more than 400 people in the last 10 years that have been prosecuted successfully in our federal courts for terrorism-related offenses. Military commissions, on the other hand, only 6 cases. This is part of the problem. The dangers of this overly expansive global war on terror is that anything can now be deemed a battlefield by the administration. ICE is responsible for holding 32,000 people in immigration detention without any charges on a single day. So why are so many of these immigrants actually ending up in jail? Well, you see, it all comes down to money. Private prisons make a killing off of undocumented immigrants because they can hold them in their prisons, allowing the detention centers to meet their financial goals.
Private prisons make money off of incarceration. The more people they lock up and the longer they keep them, the more money they make.
They're clearly making a business out of rounding people up.
The profitability of private jails depends on the prison population continuing to go up. The rate of incarceration in the U.S. has quadrupled since the 80s. While public prisons are accountable to the public, private ones answer only to shareholders and are not subject to external scrutiny. That means many private contractors face few consequences for the poor or even inhumane treatment of detainees.
All right, so let's get back to what I opened the show with. More war on terror that shows no signs of waning. We've got the Secretary of Defense telling 60 Minutes that they will not show any evidence and the public will just have to believe the administration when they label someone a terrorist and execute them without any due process. So, all that we can get from Panetta's answer here is that the evidence doesn't matter. Due process in a courtroom to prove that evidence doesn't matter. If the government calls you a terrorist, they can kill you, and the rest of us are just supposed to take their word for it.
The U.S. government now laying out its legal argument for killing American citizens overseas without a trial. But what about targeting people on U.S. soil?
Does that only apply to U.S. citizen that's overseas, or does that apply to U.S. citizen that's here?
I'd have to go back. I'm not certain whether that was addressed or not.
So that we have clarity here, he is not certain whether it was addressed, whether our government can kill our own people inside our own country.
Are you slightly uncomfortable with the idea that the United States president, whoever it may be, can decide that this or that U.S. citizen living abroad is a threat to national security and kill them?
International war on terror that's going on now, we're going to have to make sure that we have the tools to get some of these people who are very bad and comply with American law.
And you think that the president should be able to make that decision in conjunction with the folks in the administration, without going to a court, without going to you all, anything?
There is a war going on. There's no question about that. He's the commander-in-chief, and there have been guidelines set, and if he follows those, I think he should be able to do it.
Just so I understand correctly, are you really saying that in certain situations, the president can decide whether it's in the best interests of the nation and then do something illegal?
I'm saying that when the president does it, that means it's not illegal.
This federal government, this administration says it can kill Americans when they're riding with their children in a car in a desert.
That is quite a horrifying reality of how our government functions these days, of how completely out of hand this war on terror has become.
So we can kill you anywhere, and we don't have to ask a damn soul about it. So Eric Holder said, okay, you know what, we've been getting a lot of flack for that. I'm going to go to Northwestern, I'm going to clear this thing up, and he did. He gave a speech where he explained that there are no rules.
Some have argued that the president is required to get permission from a federal court before taking action against a United States citizen. This is simply not accurate. Due process and judicial process are not one and the same, particularly when it comes to national security. The Constitution guarantees due process. It does not guarantee judicial process.
And now a new interpretation of the Constitution where due process is a bunch of guys in the executive branch getting together saying, should we kill somebody? Yeah, let's go ahead and kill him.
But the thing that makes it critical here is that the U.S. government unilaterally, without any proof, without any due process at all, is actually pointing the finger and saying, you, my friend, are a terrorist. So the question then becomes, if they get to decide, what makes you question whether or not they can't decide that it's you, or it's me, or it's my neighbor, or my father, or my son?
The Constitution says to the contrary. The Constitution says if the government wants your life, or your liberty, or your property, it has to articulate to a jury what law you have violated and prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt to that jury. It's called due process. Without due process, the government could take anything it wanted and kill anybody it wanted
Well, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, along with the U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Office, have placed a large and rather interesting order. They've ordered 450 million rounds of ammunition to be made and delivered to them over the next 5 years. All right, so this is interesting because this is not the Pentagon making the order for the military. It's DHS and ICE. And to give you a little perspective here, there are only about 311 million people living in the entire country. So it begs the question, why such a massive order, 450 million bullets?
DHS, Department of Homeland Security, consists of the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, and Immigration Services. This is a domestic law enforcement agency. And to be fair, some people online who don't want to believe what's going on have said that this is just going to be used for target practice, or also it could be that the government is simply stockpiling ammunition because they don't want to get into a situation where there's an ammo shortage and our law enforcement officers don't have any ammunition. And those are both fair points, but that kind of ammo that they purchased from ATK, hollow point ammunition, as you had explained, it's designed to, tear through human flesh and then expand. It's designed to kill people. This is not the optimal kind of ammo you would buy for target practice. It's more expensive and it's more precise. But even if they're burning through 20 million rounds a month to train their agents, this is still overkill. This is still too much. So best case scenario, this is sort of a waste of taxpayers' money. And worst case scenario is, as you said, they're planning for economic unrest or violent protests or something that requires hollow point ammunition on a wide scale. And they have an open bid right now, DHS, for even more ammunition for 175 million rounds of .223 caliber rifle ammo. We're rapidly militarizing our domestic law enforcement officers, and I think a lot of people are scared. TSA is scary enough. Wait until they all have guns.
Well, I mean,
you can't speak back when they're groping you at the airport.
Since 2001, the federal government has spent $34 billion on militarizing our local police enforcement.
However, several police stations across the country have splurged on some pretty fancy equipment. The Bearcat 3. This is a 9-ton armored vehicle with bullet-resistant windows, gun ports, tear gas dispenser, loudspeaker, and a battering ram on the front bumper. Several departments, including the NYPD, are also using mobile watchtowers, giving cops an eye in the sky. Well, they took it one step further and used a DHS grant to get their own weaponized drone. That's right, this $300,000 Shadowhawk drone made by Vanguard Defense Industries weighs 50 pounds and can be equipped with a beanbag launcher and a taser, giving officers the ability to stop a target from the sky. Does the name Shadowhawk sound familiar? That's because they're the same brand that's used by the military in Afghanistan for counterterrorism operations. So why do cops need a tank or a drone? Well, they don't. But if they can get one, then they figure why not. Call me crazy, but these devices need to be left to the military for war situations, not to use against Americans for domestic purposes. And of course, if you throw the word